Okay, Ian Smith, thank you so much for hopping on with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, we, we we at Open Sources love our emerging parties or our third parties, as most people call them, and I believe you're the first centrist party person we've ever had on this show. So to kick things off, could you just describe sort of the philosophy of the centrist party? What is the centrist party?
As well, the concept of the Centrist Party, they were just started in 2020, 2021, so they're fairly young. But the concept is that instead of using rhetoric and giving empty promises just to get votes, they take a more honest and collaborative approach and try to work with all parties instead of being stuck with just following the party line. So yeah, it's some different way of doing politics instead of attacking, trying to come up with solutions that are pragmatic.
Mm.
Something that I think we don't see much of these days.
I think the obvious joke for me is don't we already have a centrist party and it's the liberals? I think we're kind of seeing that with Mr. Carney's leadership, especially. And just, for people who are seeing maybe that pivot in the Liberal Party, Mr. Carney has ended the consumer carbon tax. He's talked about repealing the capital gains tax increase. It feels, feels like very centrist moves, at least to somebody like me who's sort of politically engaged. So what is the difference between like if a centrist party is in power right now versus maybe what Mr. Carney is trying to do?
Well, I don't entirely disagree with you about the fact that the Liberals are really a centrist party. They tend to sort of sway back and forth as the winds blow, to put it that way. So
Hmm.
I would like to think that a centrist party would stay hyper focused on the agenda as opposed to like to say, following the way the wind blows. I think that's what you see going on with the Liberals as of late, is that things were heading in one direction, and okay, you change leadership and you start to go in what would appear to be almost the opposite direction. You're hearing the types of things where they're maybe talking about cutting services as well, or
Mm.
cutting government positions that would result in cutting services. So, yeah, I think in a way you've seen the Liberal Party suddenly turn to the right, really, as opposed to being centrist. And so, like I said, I'd like to think that a centrist party would be more aligned with doing what is right as opposed to doing what's politically expedient.
Well, fair enough. And I want to bring this to you specifically. Could you talk a bit about your background and why you want to run? And I guess along with that, why the centrist party spoke to you as a political entity you wanted to attach yourself to?
Yeah, so actually started off getting involved with Toastmasters, which is a public speaking organization. It's also about leadership and holding meetings. That ended up leading me into managing condominiums, which is kind of the similar process of having the meetings and the structure of doing things. And that then led me into nonprofit housing, volunteering on boards doing that, where, again, following the same sort of process of how to conduct a meeting, how to do it in an effective way. And so that's where I kind of came into once I got to know about the real issues with housing, because you really don't get to know it until you're in it. And when
Mm.
you realize it, you realize how important our roles are for people who volunteer and that sort of thing. And I want to take that a step further because I can see that those things are being paid lip service, those needs, but they're not being delivered on. And I think the most frustrating thing for me is I keep hearing talk as if the government's going to build houses. The federal government doesn't build homes. Private developers build homes.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of different ways to support nonprofit housing, but that's none of what they're talking about right now.
Mm.
So for me, the Centrist Party, I wanted a party that I wanted to work with a party that wasn't under the influence of any foreign interests or any of those other lobby groups. And, they've got a lot of financial backing, the two traditional political parties. And I wanted to walk into something that didn't have all that baggage, to put it that way, so that I could really bring something to the conversation without being hedged in by or hemmed in by, party politics, which limits your ability to speak. I'll say your truth. Instead, you have to follow the party line, and
Mm.
I wouldn't have been comfortable with that personally. So that's why I thought, well, this is a new party. It aligns more with um, the my thinking of how I think politics would be more helpful to Canadians, and that's what encouraged me to join them.
I'm going to ask you to expand on your some of what you're addressing there in terms of housing.
Mhm.
Um, there are a lot of people from all types of backgrounds in all the races across the country, all 343 ridings. So you come from a unique position where you're in housing, you're in nonprofit housing. Also, I would argue housing management if you were managing condo boards. So when you when you're thinking about housing, and everybody's talking about housing this election, that's like probably the number one issue. I think that's sort of been burned out by the polls. But when you're thinking about housing and what a federal government can do to alleviate those pressures, what are the things that come to mind?
Well, there's already some programs that were in place. We may see if, including the Accelerator Fund, which is supposed to be helping with putting seed money out there for programs to get started. These programs are always done by volunteers, and they use that seed money for the startup to get loans from CMHC or Infrastructure Ontario, and that's what allows them to build. So, what I would like to see is to continue to do that, to build bridges with the municipalities. Instead, what happens is, we have a relationship with the county or the region, and
Mm,
we may have a loan from the federal government or the provincial government, but they don't have any other involvement except to for us to do reporting, which is to do audits and that sort of thing, which is all reasonable. But there's no other support. That all comes from the county. And so, and I got to say, Wellington County has been fantastic with the programs that they have to support building housing. It's something that I've been involved in attending their programs so that I can hopefully help do that sort of thing. So, but without doing that, uh, we're not going to get any new housing. Part of what the conversation ends up being about affordable housing and housing affordability. And they're kind of two different things. And on the
mm,
one side, people are really talking about the ability for their adult child to purchase a home. Well, that's not affordable housing. There's people out there that are couch surfing or are homeless, but you don't see them,
hmm
that need housing. None of that, any conversations to do with that are applying to that. Something that I think would help incentivize the developers because land is key. Without the land, you can't build anything. And land is really at a premium now. A lot of times these places were built on land that was donated. Well, I don't think you're going to find many people donating land these days. And so maybe there could be incentives for developers that when they're building a development to provide a parcel of land, and it doesn't have to be very big because you can put a five-story building and house, quite a few people in it, and provide the site services because they're already putting them in. It would do a lot of the heavy lifting at the front end. And that kind of a commitment would make it easier to get those loans to build those projects. So I think that to me would be a fantastic way to do it where you're working in tandem with developers. If you're not doing that, nothing you do would incentivize them because it's a free market economy and they're going to they don't want to build cheap affordable homes. That's not
right.
doesn't make them as much money, and that's to be expected. So there has to be some real programs put in place to push these things forward, as well as helping to train people. Like I said, I've attended courses put on by the county. I think that maybe the federal government and the provincial governments could get more involved in helping facilitate with people gaining the knowledge. I mean, I come from a bit of a construction background, building maintenance background, and then yes, property management. So I bring a lot of things to the table in that sense. But there's a lot of things that I don't know. That
Mm,
I don't build buildings, but that's the path I need to go down. When you're doing that from scratch and you've never done it before, and you're a bunch of volunteers, it's difficult to do from scratch. So it would be really helpful to lay a lot of that groundwork and then get those things just going. Because the other part is, even if I'll give you an example, looking at hopefully contributing to the development of extra housing in Hillsburg.
mm,
Um, but to do that, we need a lot of. It's going to take years and over $150,000 or more just to get to the point where we can say, can we build?
mm,
And then you have to start building. So really, we're always 10 to 20 years behind.
right.
Um, so the more we do quickly, the more we will actually make progress. Until then, I don't believe. I mean, I heard lately, I think 500,000 homes a year. That's a drop in the bucket. There's such a huge need for housing in
I
all
believe
our.
that was Mr. Carney's plan, 500,000
Yeah, it
homes.
was.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, that doesn't. It sounds good,
Yeah.
but how does that translate into a commitment in the communities? It doesn't, I don't think, especially because that money, anything that they do has to get to that municipal level, and then there has to be the people to take the initiative to get it off the ground. I think that's the most critical thing. Without that, without people having that initiative, and again, volunteering their time, these things don't happen.
Well, you raise an interesting point, which is I think there's a group we don't really hear from on the housing front, and goodness knows I've sort of tried in my efforts to try and get more people from the private development sector sort of on the record and to talk sort of more openly about the challenges they're facing and the reason why they're not building. Um, and is that perhaps and the part of it too is I understand there's a lot of vilification of developers and landlords, and perhaps understandably, but I also think there's a kind of a knowledge gap that we have kind of a right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing situation.
Absolutely. And I think on a certain level, that's to be expected. I mean, because you're talking about the private sector versus the public sector. And to the point I was making earlier, the public sector doesn't actually build homes. They provide funding models and that sort of thing. But yeah, and like you say about the landlords too, the it's like employers as well. The
Right.
relationship is one of we need landlords. If it wasn't for landlords, we wouldn't have a lot of the housing that people are in. And part of something that certainly I see going on here in Ontario with issues with the landlord tenant tribunal and delays in that is you end up with folks who are on the hook for mortgages and that sort of thing. They've stuck their neck out to be a landlord. And whether you want to say that they're doing it for their own greedy purposes or whatever, they're providing housing for people. But if they sell their home and it goes to a family that moves in, that rental housing's disappeared off the market. And
Mm,
that's not something, that's a huge amount of our housing that, again, it's private. It's not very well organized. And frankly, the landlords are being left hung out to dry when it comes to small ones, not big ones, right? I'm sure the big ones are probably managing okay, but it's those more small people that maybe have one or two homes. And like I said, they're providing housing for people, but there's no support for them when the situation goes awry. And like you say, they're vilified, which is you're in some sense vilifying housing providers, even though they're private housing providers. I mean, all of them, everybody plays a role in this. And I mean, part of my take on the centrism thing is that if we're busy fighting with each other all the time, we're not making progress on anything. And so
Mm,
we really do have to work together, all those organizations. You can't expect one side to do something, like you say, unless they're both talking to each other. And
right.
that's not what happens at all. And I think in a lot of ways, there's a mythology out there as to how housing works. And
Mm,
people don't understand that, with the projects that I'm involved in, the majority of the people who live in them pay market rent. You can't sustain a building and provide services for everyone in it, without having a large portion of market rent. You're also providing some rent geared to income or whatever, which allows that affordable housing for people who would not be able to afford market rent. And then they all live together and it creates a community. Those types of situations, especially with building buildings, because they're more efficient. It's also more efficient for the residents' utilities. They pay less in heat and that sort of thing because it's more of a collective thing. It's sort of the theory of a condo as well.
mm.
And so when you're in a building where you have all those shared services, it's more efficient and you're able to provide the housing for those people. But again, you're, you know, you don't, I don't think you see a lot of private apartment buildings being built. I think you see them existing and being maintained, which is a struggle because that's one of the things with condominiums. You have to be planning for the future. It's the same thing with social housing. If you look at, I don't know the stats right off the top of my head, but we're losing units of housing every year. We're not gaining.
Right.
And some of that is because of an inability to manage their funds properly or proper planning, so that when building maintenance issues come up, they're not able to deal with them, or also a lack of maybe understanding of business management when you're dealing with these types of things. Because again, it all has to do with planning. If you're not planning and you're just winging it, well, you have no control over where things land,
Hmm.
and so yeah.
I could talk about this all day because
So can I.
you're seem very knowledgeable, but I do want to talk about the election because you raised a question that came in my head, which is running in Wellington-Halton Hills North. You're talking about a portion of Halton Hills, which is also a portion of Halton Region. You're talking about Wellington County, not all of Wellington County, but a fairly large portion of Wellington County, each with its own individual municipalities. And last but not least, a portion of Guelph. So you're talking, I don't know off the top of my head, that's what, a dozen municipal levels that you would be interacting with.
Yeah.
Is there sort of like, is that manageable to you in terms of like thinking about a lot of these ideas you have, which a lot of it has to do with, I guess, the difficulty in managing between levels of government and making sure everyone's on the same page and also addressing individual needs of everyone in these municipalities.
I think so. I mean, as I said before, the relationship that I have in Wellington County is with Wellington County. They do a fantastic job. A large portion of this riding is within Wellington County, and that includes the city of Guelph is part of that as well, where the county is managing housing in the city as well. So yeah, I even though it's very spread out, these different municipalities, but they have a lot of similarities in some ways. Number one, they're almost all growing. Not
Hmm.
all of them, but some are growing quite fast. Here in Erin, where I live, it's beginning to grow quickly. Places like Elora and Fergus are also growing quickly as well. And so I think a lot of these communities have the same needs. Because it's also partly the aging community that is there that's needing the housing. And then as these communities grow, the new housing developments aren't affordable to the people that live there. And so people begin to sort of get displaced. So I think that honestly, it really is, there's a lot of commonalities across the region. And I think that it is certainly possible to connect them all. I mean, when I attend things with some housing seminars with the county, there's people from across the county there from different municipalities, and we talk during breaks and stuff like that about the different challenges. And it's interesting just how many different challenges there are that we all face in the same way, and are looking for solutions. So I think the ability is there so long as we put the people together to do it. I mean, it's easy to sit here and say that, what I think is a great idea. But part of the point I'm making is it's all these people that make that happen.
Mhm.
Without connecting them and working with them and providing the supports, again, none of these things are going to work at all. But I think this particular area is perhaps unique. It's a largely agricultural area, and again, probably all, like many communities in Ontario, started around the same time or around the same age.
Sure.
Um, so yeah.
Um, we could talk about a whole host of issues, but I'm going to ask you to focus on one. And maybe it's not something that's in the Centrist Party platform. Maybe it's something that's like important to you. And I try to ask this question of every candidate, every election, just to sort of get a sense of who you are as a person who wants to be a leader. And that is, before we get to April 28th and the election is over, what is the issue that is like most important to you that you want to make sure gets like, and obviously we've lent a great deal of space in this interview to housing. So perhaps it's something different, but if there's one issue you do not want to leave left on the proverbial cutting room floor, what would that be?
Participation. That we, if us being the general population being disengaged from the conversation and being left as an observer on the side, leaves us feeling powerless and frightened. And the way to deal with that and feel like you're in control is to get out there, get involved. You'll learn new things. You'll get an understanding of the different, and whatever it is, pick something in your community or just start somewhere, whether it be a garden club or whatever, or maybe attend Toastmasters to check that out, to get a feel for the process for these things, and so that you can be more involved in your community and contribute to it, because that's what all the different groups need. We need people. We need volunteers. Many times, the volunteers that I volunteer with volunteer on multiple groups, much like myself. So you end up with a small portion of people managing a lot of things, which is actually quite difficult for them to do, but we can't help ourselves because once you get involved, it's motivating. It's motivating, and it's empowering. And then and it changes your perspective on your community.
Hmm. Before we wrap up, I kind of just want to take this may be getting a little partisan, but Michael Chong is the current MP. I mean, technically, he just finished as MP of Wellington-Halton Hills, but he's now the incumbent for Wellington-Halton Hills North. He's been in power for almost 20 years in this seat. I think a lot of people like him, perhaps people who don't necessarily like conservative policies, but a lot of people like him. And I'm curious why. I mean, first of all, why they should maybe turn over that seat to someone new, but also from your point of view, why should they turn it over to someone from, with respect, a party that will not form a government, but you will be an independent MP? Um, what is sort of the political calculus for people who may be considering change and maybe not ready to send Michael Chong back to the House of Commons?
Well, I think I have a lot of respect for Michael Chong, and his long standing in the community as an MP, and as a member of the Conservative Party. He has a lot of integrity, and I think he has demonstrated that. At the same time, you're not electing Michael. You may elect him as an MP, but you're not electing him as leader.
Mm,
And although and I don't question his competency or any of that sort of thing, but if you're trying to, mm, if you want to see any change, voting for the same thing over and over again is not going to result in that. Michael Chong's been the MP, as you say, for 20 years now. And I'm sure he served it well, but at the same time, if we bring new voices to the table, even if it's, I may not win the seat, and certainly, but bringing providing that support, they see that. They look at the numbers. And so when they have a safe seat all the time and it's guaranteed, and the party knows that, then there's no necessity for them to change. And the only way you're going to do that is by sending a message to say, we're going to support somebody else. It doesn't mean, like I said, Michael Chong may still get elected, but a message might be sent. Often, when you look at the statistics of people that don't vote for Michael Chong, more people vote for other parties than vote for Michael Chong. It's
Sure.
just spread out amongst those different parties. And the way I put it is, you end up being politically pigeonholed. That doesn't really allow you to spread your wings on different issues. You're either supporting, workers, or you're supporting this or that. You can't support all of them. You have to pick this and hold your nose and stick with it. And I feel that that's what Canadians are often doing. We're
Mm.
not voting for someone so much as we're voting against someone or something. But that shouldn't be the motivating factor. It should be, I want to see a difference. Because if you don't do anything to change it, you're not going to see any difference.
All right. Well, we brought it full circle, somewhat accidentally, but I will take it. Ian, the most essential question I have for you today, though, is where can people learn more about you and the Centrist Party?
So you can learn about the Centrist Party at centristcanada.ca. And you can learn more about me by reaching out to me by email. I'm still getting everything rolling along. It's a very short campaign. And so I'm still getting things rolling. But you can email me at Ian Smith of Erin at live.com. And that's OFERIN at live.com. And I can follow up with you and let you know, once I got my websites running and everything, where to get to that information.
Well, that's perfect. I appreciate you taking some time out today to talk to us, and good luck through the rest of the campaign. So, Ian Smith, thank you. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. My pleasure.